Hello YouTube, we have a new update. When the new update, there comes a new hunter to the game. So most of you must be asking yourselves if the hunter is worth it or if you should skip her. So before we answer that question, how about we check what she does and how to build her. So the new hunter that came to the game is Harper. She's a dark unit and a melee unit that uses an hammer as his main weapon. For skills we have a basic attack, hammer attack. She scales off HP. So she's going to be an HP scaling unit, which limits a bit of our artifact choices, but we'll get there when we get there. The core attack we have is Hammer Dash, deals a bit of damage, medium break, so she's a breaker, and every ability deals break damage. When you use her core attack, you paralyze your target. So she has a bit of utility, she stuns the targets for 3 seconds, which is useful in some fights, so from her utility she could be worth it. Her first basic skill, she deals dark damage and medium break, and it's just a damage dealing skill, no special effects attached to it, nor there are buffs to her skills. Her second basic skill, the Tenderizer, deals a big amount of damage in comparison to the last skill, and as you can see by the symbol, it's an old skill, you have to hold it. It deals Almighty Break, which is I believe the first hunter that deals Almighty Break in the kit, which is the biggest break you can have right now. And when it hits, inflicts the Pork Chop defect to the target. Pork Chop increases ultimate damage taken from Dark Hunters by 1%, stacks up to 12 times. So you have to make sure you hit all her skill hits. So basically when you hold the ability, she starts to use her hammer and crashing to the ground until the duration ends. So if you do the entire duration, I believe it will be the 12 stacks, which means you have 12% increased ultimate damage for your Dark Hunters, which means that when you want to ult with her, you have to first use this skill to get the maximum amount of damage from your ultimate. And this skill stacks up and deals a big amount of damage. From here you can see that she's going to be a decent breaker for your dark team, so if you like to use Dark Hunters, she might be worth it to go. Her special skill, so when you're using as Sung Jin Woo, she deals medium break damage and paralyzes the target. Nothing special, so for Sung Jin Woo you might not care too much about using her as a support, there's better support. Even for Dark it's better to use if you have a Silvermane Baek. He increases your attack by 20%, which is way better than the 3 seconds paralyze. But apart from that, she deals a bit of breaks, so you could use her if you want a Dark Hunter for Dark Weak boss as Sung Jin Woo, and he needs breaks. Her tagging skill, Hammer Rush, deals break damage and deals a bit of damage, nothing special, no effects, at least from her basic skill when entering. Her ultimate, it deals dark elemental damage and deals a big chunk of damage. No special abilities or effects attached to the ultimate. We'll see on the pace if there's anything special, but so far you want to use her second basic skill before you use your ultimate to increase your damage by 12% and deal a decent amount of damage. What's her passive? The Super Magic Booster effect is activated at the start of battle, so when the battle starts you already have this ultimate, this effect, and it's infinite, so it will last the entire fight. You don't need to use her to have the effect or re-enter with her, she always has it up. When the user uses Armor Drift is the first basic skill. It increases their critical hit rate and critical damage by 5%, stacks up to 4 times. So after you use your first basic skill, you get a 5% crit rate and crit damage buff, which is a lot, considering that you can stack 4 times, increasing your crit rate and crit damage by 20%, which is a lot considering that you don't have more than 50% crit rate from artifacts. So just with this effect, after you use your first basic skill 4 times, she gets a total of 20% critical hit rate and 20% critical hit damage. When you use the Armor Drift, you also get London Drift effect. London Drift effect increases damage dealt by 20%. So when you use your first basic skill, you get a 20% damage boost and a 5% crit rate. When you use your first basic skill 4 times, you get a 20% critical hit rate and 20% critical hit damage for the entire time of the fight. It's infinite, the duration of the booster, so you don't lose the crit rate and crit damage bonus even if you switch. From what this seems, it's a infinite duration, so whenever you use her after the fourth basic skill, she's going to have 20% crit rate and crit damage, and whenever you use the skill, you also get 20% damage dealt. So from this passive, you can see that if you stack as much as you can with your first basic skill and your second basic skill, your ultimate will unleash a huge amount of damage. I've tested her a bit and I can say that she deals a ton of damage. I was hitting for more than 1 million with her ultimate and with her basic skill as well. Second basic skill, she was hitting for 1 million as well. Damage wise, she deals a ton of damage, so as a dark unit you can maybe use her for a dark team, since she also has break on her skills. With this you can have a decent breaker with a ton of damage. Of course, if you have Lim Taiyun, you might not go for Harper because you already have a dark breaker, but as damage I think she will deal way more damage than him, at least that's what it felt like playing after using both. She felt way more consistent in dealing that big amount of damage since she stacks so much buffs. That 20% crit rate and crit damage buff she gets, it's a big difference compared to the other hunters that have to have an RNG for crits, considering they only have 50% while she will have 70% crit rate. Apart from the skills, we have her artifacts, and for artifacts, the best one will always be Burning Grid for breakers. It increases your crit rate and crit damage and also your entire team's crit rate. You might not be able to get the 8-piece set, so if you have the 4-set piece, you have 10% crit rate and 15% crit damage. Considering that she gets 20% extra crit rate, with this set she has at least 80% crit rate and 35% crit damage bonus from artifacts plus her own buffs. She's almost at the 100% crit rate stat, which makes her going really consistently crit your opponent, which is a big advantage compared to the rest of the Dark Hunters we have currently, since they have to rely on the 50% crit rate or another teammates' buffs. And she also can get buffs from teammates, so she will always have, if you can get crit rate from a teammate, then she will have the almost 100% crit rate with this set plus her own buffs. Apart from this set, since she scales on HP, you can always use the Burning Curse set. It's a ton of damage for her, but since you want since you have attacks that will break damage, the Burning Grid set will be better overall because it also buffs your team, but you can always use the Curse set if you have better stats. You can also use Toughness set. With Toughness set you also have the 8% crit rate, so even though it's not that 10% from the grid, it's still almost 10% and you get more crit damage from the Toughness set. Since you stack so much buffs to ult with her, you can also use the ultimate skill buff set, One Hit Kill. With this set you can stack as much buffs as you can to unleash a huge ultimate, since her kit is made to buff itself and then use her ultimate when after buffing everything. Of course it's not really that necessary, but it's a decent option. And of course, if you want to use your ultimate, there's also the Power Gauge set that increases your power gauge, so you can ult whenever you have cooldown to, when the ultimate is off cooldown basically. So that's all the sets that she can use decently. There's also the break set that from the old artifacts, increases our break effectiveness by 15%, and when attacking enemies that have elemental weakness, the break effect increases by 30%. You could use this, but it's always better to go for the Burning Grid artifact set instead, because if you're going for a break set, this one is superior in every way, so there's really no point in going the other one. For accessories, I would say the best one will be the grid set, if you can, to complete the 8 set grid effect that increases your crit rate by 15% and your crit damage by 30. With this you will have 85% crit rate instead of 80, which is a big deal. But apart from the Burning Grid 8 set and the Burning Curse 8 set, you can use the Executioner set. It's one I'm currently using. When attacking enemy with 70% or less health, your damage increases by 20%. Since she scales off HP, there aren't that many HP based sets that increase your HP, so you have to use sets that don't buff your own damage, because there's only one that buffs your damage without being tied to your attack. The rest are tied to your opponent's HP or your own HP being low, or now we have one that relies on mana, but this one is a useful one. If you're going to deal damage to the boss anyway, so once they reach the 70% threshold, you have 20% damage increase. Apart from the Behemoth set, Executioner, I would say you can use the very decent set, Concentration of Firepower. Since we saw that she wants to use her basic skills as much as possible to increase her buffs, this decreases the skills, the cooldown of the skills, but also increase your mana consumption, and the damage increase the mana consumption, and the first set effect increase your damage and the cooldown reduction. With this you can spam your basic skills more and deal even more damage with them, and that way you can get that 20% crit rate faster. But once you get to that 20% crit rate, you don't really need to spam the skill more, you just need to use it for the other effect, the other buff that increases your damage by 20% whenever you use the first basic skill, but you just need to use it once, then hold your skill until you finish the second basic skill and then go for the ultimate. So it's a decent option, but not the required. The other one will be Executioner, the Berserker, Berserker, instead of the opponents, it's your own HP. When it reaches 70%, you get 30% damage dealt increase. It's harder to do this because you don't really want to get damaged. You want to make sure you don't lose HP, and since they have their HP is so high, getting to that 70%, it's harder when you're scaling off HP. Then Sylph's Blessing is overall a decent set for most hunters. It increases your damage when you have elemental advantage. So if you use her only on dark weak enemies, then this is a good set for her as well. You don't really need to go for anything else if you're going for if you only use her for dark weak bosses. The new mana set is also decent, increases your damage by 25% if you have 40% or more of your mana. If you only use her to use her first skills and then switch, you will probably always be above the 40% mark, so it's a more buff than the Executioner one. The Executioner one is 20%, this one is 25%. If you have a decent set, I'm still farming the new set, so I'm using the old one because I got lucky with the old one. The new one I'm still farming for it. And yet for HP scaling hunters, that's pretty much it. The other sets are either attack scaling or support sets, so there's really no point in using those sets in comparison. If you're going against a dark weak boss, she's really strong. She deals a lot of damage and she has a ton of buffs, so you're going to deal a ton of damage with her own kit, buffing itself like crazy. So yeah, if you like her playstyle, go for it. If you don't think it's worth it to go for a Dark Breaker because you already have one, it's okay. It's not you can skip her and go for another better one. She deals a ton of damage, but we have a ton of good hunters that deal a ton of damage, so it's not worth it to go for her if it's just main damage dealer if you don't like her playstyle. If you want a Dark Breaker and you're just going to use her for breaking, you have Lim Taiyun. Unless you don't own Lim Taiyun, then you can go for her. But that's your decision. I still think she deals a ton of damage, but might not be worth it to go for her if you don't like the playstyle. But of course, for dark teams, she's going to be probably one of the most useful one for dark teams because of the fact that she deals so much damage, she breaks, and she gets a ton of buffs from her own kit. And yeah, that's really about it about Harper. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.